Okay. All right. Good morning, everybody. So we're going to continue with our studies of the Path of the Just by the Ramchal, and we are on page 70, at the bottom of page 74 in the editions that we're using, which is chapter 4. And the Ramchal is trying to go through some arguments over here about how you would approach somebody if you were trying to impress upon them the importance of the particular trait that we're working on now, which is the trait of Zehirut. Zehirut means living an examined life, living a life where you are actually consistently, as you go, thinking about and contemplating what's truly important to you, what your real priorities are, what your value system is, what are the most important things in your life, how you want to prioritize your life, and then arranging your life and your affairs according to your analysis and your contemplation. That's called Zehirus. And he's talking about basically that the person wants to be successful in growing as a human being, which is really the ultimate purpose why we're here, then it's impossible to do so without the practice of Zehirus, without living this examined life. Now, how does one approach this? How does one encourage somebody to consider this? So it depends on the person. Right now, he was explaining that basically one of the ways that you would approach somebody with this is say, look, in the world to come, we are all, our position, our place, our status in the world to come is going to be determined entirely by the choices that we make in this world. And just like in this world, we're not comfortable being on the bottom of the social strata, of being on the bottom of the totem pole. We do have all of us have an innate desire to have a certain amount of respect and status in society. So that's not going to change when we get to the world to come. And if we tell ourselves, oh, you know what, it's fine. All that really matters is that I'm in the ballpark, so to speak, when that I have a place in the world to come, that I have a share in the world to come. That's all that really matters. That's not really true. You don't really believe that. The only reason why we say that to ourselves is because we're looking to lighten the load or minimize the burden of having to live in a certain spiritual reality in this world that involves hard work, that involves sacrifice. When I talk about spirituality, people usually think spirituality means living on some high spiritual high and enjoying and reaping the benefits of all these lofty levels of holiness. But spirituality means hard work. Spirituality means sacrifice. Spirituality means commitment, and doing the work necessary to do the real growth in life. So that doesn't come without sacrifice. And a lot of people, all of us, in fact, at some point or another, are not altogether excited about making the commitment and the sacrifice that goes into spirituality. So we tell ourselves lies, and we pull the wool over our eyes, and we say things like, "Oh, it's okay. Doesn't matter to me that much. The world to come, as long as I have a share in the world to come, it doesn't matter if I'm on the top or if I have, the best position there or not, the best status there." That's not really true. It does matter to us. We're just saying that because we're looking to avoid the hard work of spiritual growth in this world. So that's what he's been saying over here. Now he says on the bottom of page 74, so you see that this tolerance and willingness to receive only a small share of heavenly reward that they are advocating for themselves in order to ease from themselves the weight of the divine service is nothing other than a false delusion with which their evil inclination is enticing them. and not a valid argument. Meaning that's pure Yetzer Hara. It's the Yetzer Hara that's telling you you'll be satisfied with any amount of connection, spiritual connection that you have in the world to come. That's not true. We know it's not true. It doesn't make sense. When we get to the world to come, we're going to be eternally plagued by what we could have been and how much connection we could have had and didn't achieve and accomplish. So then he says, there would never be a basis for them to fall for this spurious enticement if they would only see the truth of the matter. But because they do not seek the truth and instead continue blundering as they please, their delusion will not be removed from them until the time when it will no longer help them to realize the truth. At that time, when they stand for their divine judgment, it will be too late, but they will no longer have the ability to repair what they have destroyed. Okay, so what's going on over here? What is the Ramchal trying to tell us? So, failure to see the truth, what he's talking about. Failure to see the emes. And this is really, in a sense, the root of all bad midot, all bad character traits, is our inability to grapple with reality and truth. And even when we do recognize emes, even when we do recognize the truth, there's still an additional question, which is, do I want to accept the truth? And do I want to make the necessary changes in my life that are going to be required of me if I want to live in a way that's consistent with reality? Okay, but if you don't see and recognize truth at all, you're not going to get there. You're never going to get to that stage. Now, why do people not see the truth? We just said, because we're not seeking the truth. And I think that's a huge point over here. Ramchal says that a lot of people are not seeking the truth. So I'll ask you, if we're not seeking truth, this is a question for the group today. If we're not seeking truth, then what are we seeking in our lives? What is it that people are pursuing that seems to override the pursuit of truth, pursuit of reality? What do you think?
Just comfort, ease.
And the survey says, yes, comfort. That is what most people are seeking. People are seeking comfort or ease. They're also seeking happiness. Right? People are seeking happiness. The mistake that people make is they think it's possible to be happy without truth. And that's not true. That's simply not true, because you can fake happiness, and you can fool yourself in a sense to think that you're happy, but the truth is that you're not. It's impossible to be happy without seeking objective truth. Let me explain why that is. Because happiness, real happiness in life, only comes when we are growing as human beings. In Hebrew, the two words for happiness and growth are almost identical. Happiness is sameach, and growth is sameach. And Rav Samson Raphael Hirsch, explains that that's because the reason why those two words are so connected is because you can't have true happiness unless you're growing in life. Now, how does growth occur? How does growth take place? Growth only takes place when a person is pursuing the truth, seeking the truth, and then making an honest analysis between where I am in my life, how I'm living my life, and what is the correct, right way for me to be living my life. And then to analyze the changes that I would need to make in order to align myself with a more authentic way of living, and then to do the very, very difficult, brutal work of changing myself, working on myself in order to make that alignment or that adjustment. Okay, but when I do that, when I able to arrange my life in that way and work on that and focus on that in my life, then then I'm growing. It might be hard, it might be painful, it will be painful. It might be unpleasant, it might be uncomfortable, but at least I have the potential to be happy at that point. Because I've done an analysis. What is the objective reality? What is the correct way I should be living my life? How am I living my life? Where's the discrepancy? What do I need to do to change to make my actions and my thoughts and my words and my life and my relationships, more consistent with what I know to be the way I should be living my life? And when I do that, and I'm seeking truth, I'm seeking an objective reality to match my life up against, then I have the potential for real growth and real change. Okay. So I'll give you an example. Like I've seen this as a rabbi. I've seen this many times. So let's say, I know that there are people out there in our community, let's say, who know to be true and who recognize as emes and as reality the fact that Hashem gave the Jewish people the Torah. Right? That the Torah is a true representation of Hashem's will. Okay. Now, what do you do if you're a student of Judaism and you come to that realization? I remember, for me personally, 30 years ago, 29 years ago, when I came to that realization that Torah was true, that there's a component of truth, that God did give the Torah to the Jewish people at Mount Sinai. Okay, and I remember when I came to that realization and I gained that clarity. That's a scary moment in one's life, because at that moment, you're consciously, subconsciously, you realize at that point, I have two choices. Either I change my life to live in a more consistent way, and I start a process of growing and changing my life to be more consistent with Torah, because I believe it to be true. And I start making those difficult changes, which is hard, and people have a lot of resistance for obvious reasons. Or I live a lie. I just allow myself to turn off the switch, pretend that it's not true, and just keep living the way I was living and not living with that reality. So that's a difficult choice that a person has to make. Everybody makes that choice, either consciously or not. We make that choice. We decide, how am I going to live my life now that I've come to that realization? Because if I'm going to live my life accepting the truth of Torah as real, that means that I'm going to have to start making some serious changes. I'm going to have to start at least considering kosher food and Shabbos and all the different things that go along with what the Torah expects of us as Jews. And that's overwhelming. We have all kinds of reasons why we don't want to do that. There's too much change involved. I might have a spouse who's not interested. It might cause problems with my social life. It might cause problems with my family life, with my children. There's all kinds of problems that can come along, and difficulties and complications that come along with living that life in that way. But the other option is to pretend that it's not true, go back to living the way I was living, but then I'm not being truthful to myself. And if I make that choice, ultimately I'm going to experience a degree of sadness, emptiness, a feeling of not being fulfilled in my life. So it's a hard, the best thing to do is to run away as fast as you can and not even go there. But once you go there, once you start exploring that, you're left with two very difficult choices. Either to make the commitment of the difficult life changes and sacrifices to live consistent with this new reality, this new truth that I've discovered, or to pretend it's not there. Okay, but the pretending it's not there option leaves us unfulfilled and empty and sad. So this is just one example, but it's true in any area of life when I'm confronted with a truth. A truth, let's say a truth in my relationship, a truth about myself. If I come to a realization about myself and I realize that there's a certain area where I'm insufficient, certain character trait that I might have that I'm really, weak. I can pretend it's not there. I can pretend I'm not struggling with this problem and just ignore it and hope it goes away, which it won't. Or I can accept it and deal with it and do the hard work that goes into making the changes that are going to be necessary to be able to get there. So that's what the Ramchal is talking about. Step one is just even, am I seeking truth? Judaism encourages us, don't live a life where truth is not part of a goal. Right? We have to seek truth. We have to be truth seekers. Our neshamas desire it on the deepest level of our essence of who we are. Our souls yearn for truth. Our souls learn for an authentic life. Authentic life means a life that's aligned with what I know to be true. My neshama, my soul knows truth. I, in my conscious mind, maybe I do know truth, maybe I don't know truth, maybe I understand reality, maybe I don't understand my reality, but my neshama, the deepest part of me, automatically, inherently understands and knows truth. So that's just what I have to understand that. So now what gets in the way of me living in this authentic way, in this a way, I guess, life of authenticity is my own desire, my own will for keep my life simple, to minimize the demands that I'm going to place on my life, to allow me to stay where I am and not have to do the painful work of changing. So we turn a blind eye and we ignore it. Okay, but that's not what the Ramchal is encouraging us to do in our lives. He's encouraging us to be bold, to be courageous, and to go out and seek the truth and confront the truth. And then once you've established what you know to be emes, what you know to be true, then to do the really, really hard work of making the changes necessary to live consistently with that truth. If you know for sure that you're not going to be willing to do the hard work, then you're better off not looking for the truth. Don't even look for it, because if you look for it and you find it and then you don't do the work, you're just going to be empty and unhappy. So just keep going through life as you are, pretending that everything's great. But if you're going to be bold and courageous and do what the Ramchal is telling us to do over here, he's telling us to figure it out, seek it out, and understand what is emes, what is truth, what is reality, and then to work on alignment. Okay, so that's what he's advocating over here. There's something I want to show you, a little video, but I'm going to save it to the end, and we'll come back to it. I'll put it on at the end. But it's really an interesting question, and I think it's one that we should talk about a little bit for a minute. Which is, first of all, do we even believe that there is such a thing as truth, or does everyone have their own truth? I guess that's a way of putting it. Is truth subjective, or is there an objective truth? Is there an absolute truth? Is there a truth that overrides people's own reality? Or does our reality define truth? Do our subjective attitudes, feelings, perspectives define truth? It's a huge, huge question, by the way, in our world today. It's a huge question in our world today. Is there such a thing as objective truth? Or is truth defined by each and every one of us, however I define truth? If that's what truth is, then there's nothing to discuss. But is there something called absolute objective truth? I'd like to open that question up, actually, and see what people think about that. If anyone has any thoughts about that. And a follow-up question might be, if there is objective truth, if there is objective reality, how do I find it, and what do I do when I find it? anyone has any, if anyone wants to, share anything on that, I'd love to hear what people say about that. Nothing.
That's what you need a rabbi for.
But everyone has to have an opinion about that. Everyone must have an opinion about that. Julie, what do you say? I see you unmuted.
Yeah, my first thought that there is a truth if you believe in science, because things can be proven, but then there's definitely things like what you were saying about the Torah, that the Torah came from God. Is there really hard evidence? I mean, I think some things you just have to believe that you can't prove with evidence and facts. So I don't know. I don't have an answer, but I'd like to think that there is a truth and one's version of the facts that people can agree on and look at objectively.
Okay. What about morality? Like, is there an objective notion of what's right and wrong? Are there certain things that are objectively right and objectively wrong? Or is morality something that is, just determined by what people think reality is?
David, can I make a pass at the more general question before you got to the morals part? One of the things that I've been struck with in my learning is that there is nothing in life which is certain. There is always a gap that separates absolute fact from simply data coming in. The real difficulty comes in the way we evaluate the size of that indecision, the size of that uncertainty, because we make decisions in our lives, the way we live, on the basis of a standard which is much, much, much lower, much more tolerant than the evidence that is available that confirms the reality of an outside standard and of God. That the information will always be incomplete. There will always be a gap. But if you're really critical in your thinking and you use the traditional sources to guide your analysis, what you find is the probability, the kind of internal sense of whether this is truth or not is much higher, is much more on the side of demonstrating the reality of God than of just throwing it away and saying the only recourse we have is just to make a decision to believe.
I think that's a good point. And ultimately, the way we decide and make decisions in our lives has to do with percentages of likelihood. I mean, when you invest money in anything in your life, you're investing money based on your assumption that the likelihood is that this is a good investment, right? So we never know anything with absolute certainty. But to Julie's point, now is not really the time to do this, but there actually is a great deal of evidence, psychological evidence, historical evidence, archaeological evidence, philosophical evidence that can show and demonstrate that the Torah is true, that there is a Torah that an infinite being gave a Torah to the Jewish people. But that's for another time. But on the issue of morality, the issue of morality, it's a very, very touchy subject right now. I want to show you this video, but I want to actually, is there a way for me to pause the recording? Nothing just happened. We're just continuing along with our class here. Okay.
I think that's fascinating, though. It's true, and it's definitely playing out in politics, which is very scary that everyone has their version of the truth.
Right. That's right. And there's almost something wrong with, I mean, like we saw, like that professor said, like, I'm very uncomfortable with the concept of truth. You keep using the T word, we're going to end this interview right now, which is like, this is coming from a university professor. A university is supposed to least theoretically supposed to be, we know it's not, but at least in theory it's supposed to be a place where they're pursuing truth. And that's, we as a society, we've moved very, very far away from that. And that makes Judaism, the whole foundation of Judaism is threatened, deeply threatened, by a society that sees truth as being something bad or evil. Like, I agree with that guy who was doing the interview. I just want to understand reality. I just want to know what is. It's up to me to decide what to do with it, where I want to go with it, what direction I want to take it. But first and foremost, like, let's find out what's true. Let's find out what's real. But that's not something that's so okay to do anymore in our current environment, which is to me, it's a very, very scary thing. Okay, well, we don't have to dwell on this. Let's keep going a little bit into the Ramchal further, a little bit further. So now we're on the bottom of page 75. And the Ramchal says like this. So this is what Shlomo HaMelech, i.e. King Solomon, this is what he, peace be upon him, this is what he was referring to when he said, whatever you're able to do with your ability to do, whatever you are able to do with your ability, do. He's commenting on the last, he's following up on the last point that he made, which is that they'll ultimately, if you look at the paragraph before, there ultimately will be a time when you can no longer help people to realize the truth. At the time that they're standing up for divine judgment, it's too late. Meaning, the analogy that we've used a million times, that once you're on the airplane, you can't upgrade to first class anymore. Once you leave this world and you're facing a divine judgment, you can't fix what you want to fix at that point, even though you wish you could. Okay, so he says, King Solomon says in Koheles, whatever you are able to do with your ability, do. Where there is neither action nor reckoning, right? You can't, you can't account for things, and you can't explain things, nor knowledge nor wisdom in the grave where you are going. Meaning you can't acquire new knowledge, you can't acquire new wisdom. This means that whatever good deeds a person does not do, while the ability to do them is given him by his creator, and this ability is the power of free will that is given to him all the days of his life, during which he has free will and is commanded to act in the service of Hashem, he will no longer be able to do it in the grave and in the abyss when he no longer possesses this ability. Meaning, as long as I have free will, as long as I'm alive and as long as I'm breathing, I can make choices that will permanently affect my eternal reality. But once I leave this world, then I no longer have that ability. So now is the time to do these things, and fix what I need to fix, and to realign myself. For one who did not accumulate many good deeds during his lifetime, cannot do them afterwards. You can't do chesed afterwards. You can't do acts of kindness afterwards. You can't decide you want to start keeping kosher after you've left this world. You can't decide you want to start keeping Shabbos when you get up to the world to come and you find out what the reward for keeping Shabbos is. You don't have that choice anymore. You no longer have free will. One who did not make a reckoning of his actions in this world will not have an opportunity to make a reckoning then. And one who did not become wise in this world will not become wise in the grave. And you can't get to the next world and say, oh, you know what? Now I realize there's a commodity, that wisdom is a real precious commodity up here. I'm going to start studying wisdom. No, you can't do it once you get to the grave. It's too late. And this is what Shlomo stated in the verse, where there is neither action, nor reckoning, nor knowledge, nor wisdom in the grave where you are going. By contemplating this reality and recognizing that one's status in the world to come will relate directly to the efforts he made in this world to choose the correct path, one can be motivated to make the accounting required for Zehirus. Okay, that should motivate me to do it in this world. This is the motivation for the second group of people, meaning those roused by the desire for honor. Okay. Then he goes into the third level of contemplation. I think maybe maybe we'll stop a little bit early here and see if anyone has any thoughts or comments. Otherwise, we can keep going. I think we'll continue next week, but this brings us into a whole nother discussion about reward and punishment. That's the next level that he takes it to. The next level that he takes it to is that if one, if somebody really understands the concept of reward and punishment, then they're also going to be much more likely to live that examined life and focused life, because they don't want to get to the world to come and have to pay, for mistakes that they've made in this world. They want to make sure to clean everything up in advance. Hi, Carol. Oh, I see all your artwork there. It's so nice. But you're muted. Can you unmute yourself?
No. Hi. I was really drawn to listen today. I didn't know exactly why, but now I do. I have a question about what you're talking about. I think that I definitely agree about learning, and part of that is uncovering what is the truth. The question is, where do we start? Do we start with an external belief, and then from there, external from the world, and then we examine it? Or do we start looking into ourselves as things come along and decide what is truth? And the example I guess I can use is myself, in that my understanding of God and Torah has really changed so much. But as I've grown and learned, I didn't start off with this absolute belief in Torah or God. And as I continued to study Judaism and Kabbalah and things in the world, it made sense to me that there was a definite correlation between science and the Bible. Things kept being proved scientifically as I was searching for what is the truth about God. So what I heard was your experience of accepting Torah as truth, as a representation of God, that then determined your actions, in your pursuit of the truth. But for many people, that doesn't become a reality, their own reality, and maybe until very late in life. And so during that time, if I haven't accepted that as the truth, as Torah as the truth, it's a question of, do I have to have something externally that
I think I understand. I think I understand where you're going. I think what the Ramchal is telling us over here. Both of your options, I think, are options. There's two ways to do it: is to look at my own life and to, but I think what the Ramchal is saying over here is that he uses the word mivakesh, and to actively seek out truth. In other words, we need to be like Abraham. Abraham was on a war path to try to get to the truth.
Right.
He was relentlessly pursuing the truth. And
right.
The Ramchal is telling us that we need to do the same. We need to be actively trying to figure it out, actively trying to figure out what is true. That means we need to, whatever we need to do, whatever we need to study, whoever we need to speak to, whatever, we can't just wait for the truth to hit us over the head, because it most likely won't, And so that, I think that's what the Ramchal is saying over here, is that it's really about active pursuit of the truth. And as Jews, that's really something that we need to be focusing on. So trying to figure out, is the Torah true? It either is or it isn't. Right? How do I find that out? How would I even begin to know that? Well, let me listen to some classes on the topic. You know, if anyone's interested, send me a message and I'll give you a list of classes you can listen to on the topic. But I think it's very, very important. But I will say that one shouldn't pursue the truth unless they're willing to accept it. Because the worst thing is to pursue the truth and find it and then be like, you know what, it's a little too overwhelming for me. I'm going to go back to pretending that, you know, that's not a good thing, because then, you know, you saw the truth and you ran from it. So you have to make the bold decision. I'm going to seek the truth. And when I get clarity on what I believe to be true, I'm going to put myself into it 100% and go for it in a healthy, normal, slow way, of course. But
Right. Okay. Thanks.
sure. All right.
David,
Yeah.
I think that truth and morality both are so excuse me, so strongly influenced by the society that you live in that it's really, really hard to take an excuse me. Hang on. An independent approach to either. You know, what's moral in the United States is not moral in other countries. What the truth is here, or even what some people say the truth is and some other people say the truth is. I don't think you can do it alone. I think you need to have some guidance, some help to keep you insulated from all the outside influences. Otherwise, you're at the mercy of, you know, your surroundings.
I think absolutely. It's not something you can easily do on your own. I mean, it's much better to have, you know, a teacher and a mentor and a friend and other people in your life who you're, you know, on this path with, because it's, you know, it is definitely a complicated thing. But you know, but if a person really wants it and is really committed to it, it is possible to get there. But it's hard. It takes real effort. It's not something that, you know, you dabble in or you know, sort of, you know, do when it's convenient. It's a real commitment to, you know, jumping in and really trying to figure out what's right, what's not right, what's true, what's not true. And there's no question that having, you know, partners with you in the process of seeking the truth is definitely going to help you get there much better. You know?
I've said to you many times that I've got to stop studying with you, because the more I learn, the less I do, the worse off I am. So I don't know. This may be my last class.
All right, well, it was fun while it lasted.
I enjoyed it. It was a good run.
Good run. All right. Okay, fine. I'm gonna jump off, but I'll see everybody next week. Wishing you all Shavua Tov, all the best.
Oh,
Happy Father's Day.
thank you.
Back at you.
Okay. Take care, everybody. All the best.